This video is part 4 of my analysis of Season 1 of Star Trek the original series and attempts to determine the structure of the Federation. As with my other videos in terms of this analysis series, it's impossible to determine this fact with any level of accuracy, but we can get an idea of the type of command and political structure which is likely to align with the episodes as seen in Season 1. We know there are 12 enterprises in the fleet. While it's not definitive, there is a strong indication the Enterprise is a capital ship, and as is the other 11 vessels. This means it's part of what could be called a space fleet or space-based navy or star fleet. The Enterprise communicates with and is ordered around by a Starfleet. While in one episode the Enterprise is informed of a ship being destroyed by an organisation calling itself the United Earth Space Probe Agency, by the end of Season 1 it's clear that the Enterprise is under the direct command of an organisation called Starfleet. The Enterprise is part of a combined military organisation called the United Earth Space Probe Agency. This could be the equivalent of the Navy, for example, although Kirk calls it a combined service, so it's probably not analogous to the Navy. This organisation seems to control, or at least monitor, the merchant space fleet as it monitored the destruction of the cargo vessel Antares. It also very likely that this organisation commands the star bases. Perhaps this includes any ground forces as well as any atmospheric vehicles. Finally, it seems very likely it commands Starfleet. While the Federation has been mentioned, as well as Starfleet, perhaps each Federation member has its own fleet. Thus the Earth, probably the major member of the Federation, has its own fleet. As we never really see any alien-type Federation ships, it's likely that the Earth, or human part of the Federation, represents the overwhelming part of the Federation. The Vulcans are an issue, as you would expect them to be more advanced than Earth. We know that later in the series, a starship like the Enterprise is crewed exclusively by Vulcans. While unlikely, could the humans be the main builders and maintainers of the combat fleet? This seems the most likely scenario. Just a quick note, the episode where the Vulcans are crewing a spacecraft similar to the Enterprise could actually be the Vulcans crewing a Vulcan ship, and it just so happens to reduce costs. They used a model of the Enterprise to reflect it. If this is the case, then possibly each member of the Federation truly does have its own fleet. This shows a possible structure based on the evidence I've managed to piece together in Season 1. It's possible the star bases may have been under the control of Starfleet rather than directly under the United Earth Space Probe Agency, and it's also possible Starfleet has its own exploration arm and research bases. Although probably the structure you see here is the most likely. The ground forces is the wild card, but as Kirk calls this a combined service, that is the United Earth Space Probe Agency is a combined service, obviously all the required military services which make up the United Earth Space Probe Agency must be placed here. One interesting point is that there is a United Earth which runs 12 Enterprise-like capital ships under what is called the United Earth Space Probe Agency. If Starfleet is under the United Earth Space Probe Agency, then the Federation must be controlled and dominated by Earth. While this is possible for independent human planets, this must also apply to the Vulcans, which seems unusual. We know the Vulcans crew a ship like the Enterprise, presumably it's one of the 12 capital ships, or as indicated earlier, possibly to reduce costs, they just used the model of the Enterprise and said this is a Vulcan vessel. This is all very confusing and not really defined to any great degrees, but there's no doubt in the original series Earth is a significantly bigger and more important component of the Federation than you would get in the Next Generation, for example. The way it's looking to me is that the Earth-Romulan War unified all the human planets, in the same manner as the Franco-Prussian War unified all the German states under Prussia. After the war, the Federation was formed. Again, like Germany. Germany, or Deutschland, basically means land of the Deutsch, and it was a federation. If the federation is similar to the German Federation, then we are looking at a very different view of the Federation that we may have originally had specifically if we mainly looked at the next generation. The German Empire, which was a federation of states, did contain non-German areas. This was mainly Polish and French, but were minor parts. These were minor parts. An attempt to maintain their local language and customs was certainly allowed, and in some cases actively encouraged. The initial Star Trek Universe Federation could have been the same, with non-humans slowly joining for economic and military benefits. Thus, the Federation could very well be the new name of very much a human-centric or human-dominated organisation, which other alien races have joined for their own personal benefits. It's rapidly looking like that the structure of the Federation governing body consists of representatives of all the independent planets. For example, we know Mars is most likely an independent human planet, and at least one planet in the Alpha Centauri system is an independent human planet. Vulcan must be an independent alien planet, and it's likely there is a Orion alien independent planet, although there is likely a human colony in the same system which would be suitable for an Earthman to set up a business on, trading green-skinned Orion slave women. Pike was certainly an edgy sort of guy, so Orion may have been an inferior member, but let's say it is an alien independent planet. Earth too could also be considered an alien planet of the Federation. As of the 21st episode, there were 11 human planets and 2 to 3 alien planets which could make up the Federation in terms of independent planets within the Federation. There must be more, but for the Federation to engage in any form of military action, it has to go through the United Earth Space Probe Agency, which means United Earth may well have some form of veto power. United Earth is looking like a pseudo-head of state for the Federation. As I progress through the episodes, I have no doubt this view will alter, but it's not the view we understand from subsequent Star Trek-ish series. Should be also an interesting note that in Season 2, which we're not really covering in any great detail here, the Federation offered the position of a seat on the Federation Council to a specific Vulcan, which makes me wonder if the seats aren't allocated in the same way as the House of Lords. But anyway, that's a side issue. Also, it's interesting to note, if we do the analogy with the German Federation, it's true Prussia unified all the German states under it. Prussia was the name of the original state that unified everyone, but it then became Germany, or Deutschland, land of the Germans. So the Federation could possibly represent the federation of all the human planets, as well as any alien planets who wish to join. Anyway, it's an interesting view of the structure of the Federation, which before I did this in-depth analysis, I didn't quite consider in any great depth. This ends part 4 of my video series on the structure of the Federation. The episode scripts can be found on the URL shown or in the description. Live long and prosper, fellow Trekkies.